This is the Didlake Difference, the show all about creating and promoting opportunities for people with disabilities. Each episode will bring you expert insights and relatable topics that ignite meaningful conversations and inspire change within our communities.
April is Autism Acceptance Month, and today we're joined by Meghan, Director of Didlake Autism Center of Excellence. Meghan has spent 12 years with Didlake, and she's passionate about creating employment opportunities that work for everyone. Hi, Meghan.
Hello, thanks for having me today.
Of course, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. So, you're the director of, I want to get your title right, of course, Director of the Didlake Autism Center of Excellence.
Right.
So, can you tell me a little bit about it and why it's such a valuable resource to Didlake?
Oh, sure. So the Autism Center of Excellence, or we call it ACE, came about several years ago when we saw prevalence rise in people with autism being diagnosed. And so we understood that this was many individuals coming to our services with autism, so the need to learn more about it and have a subject matter expert, if you will, on that. So the ACE is really responsible for internal support, so creating programs around autism, doing consultations, providing education and knowledge to our internal organization, and also externally, the ACE will partner with businesses and communities to really create opportunities for people with disabilities.
That's awesome. And how long has ACE been running for?
So it's been running for, I don't even know.
A long time,
years.
right?
I think more than 5 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so just going back to that about how it's for people on the autism spectrum disorder, correct? So can you tell me a little bit about autism and kind of, how you all create the programs that help support these individuals?
Sure. So autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, or we just call it autism, is about 1 in 36 individuals are being diagnosed. So 1 in 36 8-year-olds walking into a doctor's office are being diagnosed with autism. So that's the prevalence. And what we're finding is about 20% of Didlake employees or consumers are also on the autism spectrum. So it's a spectrum. It's a wide range. And we used to say Asperger's in different levels, but now it's all under the autism umbrella.
Okay, wow. Nice. And so how does communication vary among individuals with ASD?
So communication, so there's 2 characteristics of ASD or autism. There's the first one is communication. So there's a lot of different ways to communicate, but usually there's some kind of difference in communication. So we can see individuals that are very verbal, and we can see individuals that are nonverbal. But nonverbal doesn't necessarily mean non-communicative, because we know all behavior is communicative. So we usually will, there'll be a range of that. So some individuals just need some help communicating, maybe some different ideas or different ways. Some people can verbally be very communicative, but have trouble like in social situations, for example.
Right.
The second characteristic of autism is a restrictive or repetitive behavior or a fixated interest. So that hyper-focus or the incredible knowledge on one subject, where someone knows everything they can know about baseball players or dinosaurs, which can be a strength, but also can be, an issue if we can't, move off that. So change can be a support need, and having a different schedule or different work tasks that come into adult life. Transportation, going to an airport, all those things can be difficult for somebody that maybe has a restrictive interest or sensory needs.
Right. And so seeing as that Didlake creates and promotes these opportunities for people with disabilities in the workplace, how does that translate into the workforce for an individual with autism?
So what we see that in businesses is helping employers really to understand how to communicate differently to different employees.
Okay.
And we're finding that a lot of these communication supports, the knowledge that we're sharing about autism is good for all employees.
Right.
So as we help employers understand like interview processes. It actually benefits all the employees that are, interviewees that are coming. So we work on things like different ways to communicate. So verbally is a great way to communicate, but not for everybody. So having a visual, having technology, text, email, pictures, YouTube, really to communicate the information you want to get across as an employer. So helping understand different ways to communicate with their employees. Written is really good. Allowing extra processing time. So for somebody with some processing or verbal challenges, having to get these words out, like I'm trying to stumble over my words now. It's hard for all of us.
Of course.
But allowing someone to have that extra time to respond,
right,
to kind of form the information in their head and then get it out verbally. And it might even be better to have a chance to write it down or email with your coworkers.
Right. And so as you're offering these supports to employers, how does that process work with ACE? Like, how do they kind of
sure.
Yeah.
So part of the ACE, the internal support, is we have a autism supplementary evaluation. So anybody coming right now, it's into our rehab departments, support employment, for example, I'll get a list of individuals that have a diagnosis of autism. It could be a first or second diagnosis, and then we offer them a chance to get this extra level of evaluation that are specific to their needs and specific to autism. So that's one way we kind of go above and beyond with our services, is we offer really tailored, customized information gathering for our folks on the spectrum. And that translates into training the job coach or the day support provider or the WSD in these techniques, and then that makes the service better. They can pass it on. So that's one way we do it. We also have an Autism Center of Excellence newsletter that's about to drop soon that offers, just a training. We are highlighting an individual that works for us with autism. We offer resources in the community so folks can get connected with social groups, or caregivers or loved ones can get connected to support groups. So those are other things we do just internally to get the Autism Center of Excellence to support our individuals out there.
Wow, that's incredible. And so if somebody were to look for these sorts of resources, is the Center of Autism
Autism Center of Excellence,
Autism
ACE.
Center of Excellence, ACE. It's a mouthful.
Yes.
So if someone were looking for these resources, how would they go about that process?
Sure. Well, we do have some things advertised on our website.
Okay.
Internally, I usually reach out to our staff and let them know I'm available to reach out to me anytime. Through the newsletter, the website, my email, you can always email me as well, mstubbs@didlake.org. And then just being proactive and going out and doing things like in-service training for our employees. And then for the community, really through our business advisory councils, I have a group of individuals through businesses in the community that I meet with, let them know about Didlake and our diverse hiring practices and our individuals looking for jobs, but also educating them on how to support their workers so they can get connected through Didlake through Business Advisory Council as well.
That's awesome. So many wonderful resources. So kind of touching back in on, employees with ASD, would you be able to share some of the strengths of having them in the workplace?
Oh, sure. So there's some fantastic strengths of hiring somebody on the autism spectrum. The attention to detail, honesty, sometimes honest to a fault. They will tell me how I look, be it good or bad. Honesty, reliability. So a lot of individuals are very particular. So being on time, leaving on time. We've had to do some training around, if you got to clock out at 5, the individual will clock out at 5, not 5:05.
Yeah.
So there's some training around, like, no one teaches you that you might have to finish your email before you leave work. So there's some wonderful positives, just that linear thinking can be really great at numbers, really great at technology, really great at inventory, making sure things that hyper-focus can be a real strength.
Right. That's so true. And I think that those are all incredibly important in the workplace. So to address some of the challenges, how do you think that employers can go about when they're challenges do arise?
Oh, sure. So there are some challenges because of the two characteristics, the communication and the intense focus, restrictive sensory issues. Challenges can certainly come up. So what we tell employers is really just gain knowledge, gain awareness of what autism is,
Right.
or a comfortable working environment for everybody. So gain knowledge, gain awareness, learn how to offer different communication styles. So we're sending our messages out verbally, through video.
Right.
We want to make sure we have closed captioning on our communications. We're getting it in writing. We're getting feedback from those individuals. Having clear, concise communication is real important. Sometimes I tell people, when you're really clear and direct, sometimes it can come across as rude. But for someone that is having trouble processing or understanding, it's so helpful.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to be very, very direct and very clear. For example, I had a gentleman that was interviewing for a job, and he was required to bring his references. And so we walk into the interview, and here comes his pastor, his teacher, his mom, in person, his best friend.
Yeah.
And we said, we meant just bring a copy of phone numbers. So that's just an example of how if you don't be really crystal clear, sometimes it can be misinterpreted by someone who's very logical and linear thinking. So he got the job. Everything was very successful. He went above and beyond, right? So having that clear direction, having different ways to communicate, allowing for sensory preferences, like if it's reasonable accommodation is what we talk about at work. So if there's lighting sensitivity, we can dim the lights. We can wear headphones. There's a lot of things we can do in our job that is perfectly fine for the job. Again, reasonable accommodations that won't interfere with the job at all. Those are things we can do to help somebody that might have those sensitivities. If it's a really loud and noisy work spot, maybe we can offer an alternative working environment for that individual. That's really helpful. Sometimes there's things like sensitivities to feelings and touch. So a certain type of work glove might not be preferred, but what's the harm in just using a different type of material for that glove? So those are the things we want employers to think about. We don't have to do big changes or anything super expensive. It could be just something very simple as letting the individual sit on a ball while they're working, because that movement is really good for processing instead of a chair.
Yeah.
What does that cost us? So
those
are some ideas.
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly important to touch on these things because kind of like what, to your point that you were saying earlier, which is that these sorts of what we'll call reasonable accommodations will often work for other individuals as well, right?
Correct.
Anybody in the workplace can benefit from
That's
these.
Right.
The whole point about being direct and concise and, being clear with your communication, that is something that anybody in the workplace can benefit from. So having that initial awareness is incredibly important. Definitely. And so I think you've touched on this a lot, which is what steps businesses can take to build that supportive work environment for employees. But is there anything else that maybe we can add to that?
I think just getting to know your employees, going with the strengths. So if someone's really detail-oriented, maybe, maybe have them do more detail-oriented things instead of customer-facing things. Go with the strength, and that's for all employees. If we're really good at one thing, maybe just learn about that and put more job tasks in their strength area. It's going to be more successful for the business.
100%. And so we know that there are a lot of misconceptions that can sometimes arise when thinking about hiring individuals with disabilities. Just to touch on one of them is that some people may say that hiring people with disabilities negatively impacts business performance. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. There's lots of studies that actually show it's the opposite, that it positively affects business performance and actually the bottom line too. So individuals that have the supports they need at work, that are having success in their job, that they have higher retention. They're more loyal to their job. It's someone that, a lot of these individuals that have overcome something challenging in their life make a great employee because they learn how to, appreciate where they are and overcome challenges, problem solving, all that kind of stuff. So It is good for the company. It's a good reputation builder for the company. Usually individuals will have a diverse way of thinking or think outside the box, which adds to the success of the company. So we're not really seeing any kind of takeaways. We're just seeing that it adds more.
Wow, that's incredible. A lot of really, really great information. And this is like something that you've also touched on a little bit with going back to a lot of people think that when you hire somebody with a disability that this would increase employee turnover or the absenteeism rates. So what are your thoughts on that?
So what we have seen really is it's kind of the opposite again. It's, especially as people with autism that are very routine. They thrive on routine. They thrive on honesty, on social justice, all these things. So they're going to be the ones that are showing up to work.
Yeah.
They're the rule followers. So we're seeing a decrease in turnover, a decrease in absenteeism because that dedication to the job, the loyalty, those characteristics fit in really well with that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's incredible that's something that you really need to keep in mind, right? Because it is something that's very easily forgotten, that's very easily looked past, but there are so many benefits to hiring individuals with disabilities and individuals with autism. So that's really incredible to hear. Let's see here, kind of thinking about a little bit more about like that whole like innovation aspect of it, right? Do you have any kind of stories or any sort of insights on individuals that have, kind of brought that into the workspace?
Sure. Early on in my career, I was an employment specialist, and I was helping an individual that had autism, and he had some communication support challenges. And he would kind of script. So he would play he was a young man, freshly out of high school, and he would play a lot of video games. If anybody has teenagers and they play video games, a lot of them are very violent. And so he was saying all this script from the video game that was wildly inappropriate for work. But it was his way of coping. It was a sensitivity. It was a sensory way of him coping and being in a new environment. So that's a very common characteristic. So my job was to help him get a job, but also help him to maybe just and
Yeah.
we're not cussing at work is not appropriate. So teaching appropriate work skills.
Right.
So long story short, this was just really difficult for this gentleman. He just couldn't. This was a really big coping mechanism for him. It was almost like stimming. Some stimming is fine. We want to normalize it. We all have things we do to help us get through the day. I drink coffee all the time. We have our things. But anything that the behavior that goes and will negatively affect your work is something that our wonderful employment staff, work on so much. So we found out he was really good with numbers. And we found a small company that did they sold supplements and all this wonderful organic things. And we found him a job that he got into, and he was filling containers. He was filling vitamins and supplements, and he could cuss as much as he wanted to. There was nobody else there. So instead of changing him for the job, we just changed the job for him. His employers loved him. He actually got promoted. He started doing all their inventory because he was so exact and so good at matching numbers. He started doing all the inventory, all the invoice checking. So he was highly accessible, even though, he had this behavior that was kind of holding him back professionally. But it was just the job that needed to change, not necessarily him.
Wow. And so I think speaking to that experience that you had as an employment specialist before, how would you say that that's kind of impacted the way that you lead your role today?
Sure, so that impacted it a lot. I learned a lot, went through training to become an autism specialist, worked with a lot of individuals, adults with autism. So the famous quote is, you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So everybody's different, everybody has different learning styles and support needs, of course, but it really prepared me to understand that we just take the individual for who they are, their strengths, there's beauty, there's challenges for all of us. And I think Didlake does that so well. We just, cultivate this environment of success and help that individual for where they are. So that really taught me to kind of, there's a lot of different ways we can help somebody. Communication is not just one thing. Behavior is not just one thing. And so the more we're educated about it, the more we can provide supports to help people get to be successful in their communities.
Right. That's incredible. And I think that experience is so valuable, right, at the very beginning. And that's awesome. Yeah. And so what is one key takeaway that you would like your listeners to take from this conversation celebrating, April being Autism Awareness Month, Autism Acceptance Month, and what's one takeaway?
Well, I just want everybody to know that Temple Grandin once said that we need all kinds of minds, that people have strengths, and we want to welcome those people into our communities. We all need support. We all need someone to help us out every once in a while. This is very, we say it's different, not less.
Right.
So I want people to remember that, and April is a wonderful time to celebrate. You can watch movies about autism. There's so many wonderful things. Wear blue.
Yeah.
We Didlake is sponsoring an Autism Fun Fest, a walk to raise awareness from the Autism Society of North Virginia. So there's some fun things going on here. I'll be going out to the sites and talking about it. But yeah, I just want people to remember that, it's just different, not less.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing,
You're welcome.
Megan.
Thank you.
So as we wrap up, remember that hiring people with disabilities isn't just the right thing to do, it's great all around. With April being Autism Acceptance Month, it's the perfect time to challenge these misconceptions and to recognize the value of people with disabilities and everything that they bring to the workforce. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to watch our next episode, and remember to visit us at didlake.org and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And thank you so much, Megan, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.